In a world of ordinary fantasy football podcasts, ordinary guys rise up to bring you extraordinary analysis and entertainment. This is the Falafel House Fantasy Football Podcast with your hosts Kevin Cotillo, Sal Lito, and Stephen Marcus.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Today is Sunday, October 30th, and this is the Falafel House Fantasy Football Podcast. My name is Kevin Cotillo, and I am your host, and I have with me Sal Lito. What's going on, Sal?
Oh, hi, Kev. I'm not feeling whole tonight.
You're not whole tonight? I don't even know what that means.
I feel like a part of me is missing.
Really? It does seem a little empty here tonight.
Yeah, my BFF, Chopsy himself, Mr. Sidskeet. Steve, he's not with us.
Steve is not with us. That is true. It is sad. He is some other things that he had to attend to tonight, some family stuff going on. So he's not here, which is sad for me because I don't really like you, Sal. We don't.
Well, the feeling's mutual, my friend. We usually nuzzle between those chops and pull through.
Yeah, he usually keeps us separated. He's the glue that keeps us together. So it's really hard to not have him here.
What the hell? We're here. We're gonna push through. I don't care what anybody actually thinks out there. Kevin and I get along just fine.
Quite well.
Even if he is from New England, he's still my falafel brother, and we are ready to go full bore into these crappy games from today.
That's right. There was a lot of crap out there. Besides the crap of Steve not being here, it's actually probably a good thing that he's not here because he is getting crushed once again in falafel, so he would probably be a little miserable.
Yeah, I don't know that if there's any truth to the rumor that he is under observation so that he does not do harm to himself.
Is he under house watch?
I believe there's some kind of an ankle bracelet involved.
All sharp objects have been removed.
Yeah, he's got plastic butter knives. It's always allowed to butter your toast, buddy. It'll be okay. We'll see you on Tuesday.
It'll be okay. Steve will be back to help us get through the rest of the week without killing each other. So you don't have to worry about just us being around for the next couple of episodes. But for now, we're going to run through some football tonight. There was a lot of things happening in this week's games. A lot of interesting fantasy nuggets to go through. But overall, I don't know. I looked at today, and I feel crappy about today. I feel crappy about the way that today went. I mean, I don't have Derek Carr anywhere, so that pretty much kills my day.
Good news. I was going against them.
Of course you were. Of course you were. So when you're in that many leagues, I think at some point you're going against everyone.
Well, luckily in this particular league, I happen to be going against him and also Julio Jones the week that he had 40-something points. So that particular league, it's just kicking me in my ass.
Yeah, it sounds like it's not a great league for you.
No, not good.
You might want to work on that. But there are definitely some good things out there, I guess. Well, like I said, not a lot of good things for me, but the quarterbacks seem to be having a great day all around. I'm looking through the list here now, and I have Nick Foles in falafel scoring at number 15, it looks like, and he has 16.8. So the 15th ranked quarterback has 16.8 points in our league right now.
I'm not going to lie to you because I like to think that I'm pretty on top of my football stuff. I wasn't even sure that he played for the Chiefs.
Yeah.
I wasn't even sure.
Yeah.
Coming into today, I probably wouldn't even be able to tell you who he played for.
Yeah, you know what I like about that is that I actually thought that Alex Smith was going to have a pretty good day today, and if you look at the numbers combined, he would have.
No, he would not have.
Well, he had 10 points, and
he's Alex Smith.
And Nick Foles had another 16. That's 26, almost 27 points there, buddy.
He's Alex. You're forgetting the Alex Smith portion.
Oh, that's right. Why do I always forget that he's Alex Smith?
Yes.
Because
Smith.
Because it should be a good offense. That's why. And it's not, because it's Alex Smith. So you want to get into some games?
Let's get on it.
I think without Steve tonight, because since he's the one that really just rambles on, I think we'll be able to cruise right through these.
It's true. He's a bit of a stuttering prick. Oh,
wow. I don't know.
Steve, make sure when you edit this, you put the little beep in there.
Yeah. I don't know if you can say that on the air, but I will say this just before we get started, that you may want to follow us on Twitter. You can follow me as @WallyCentral. You can follow Sal as @LitoSal. You can follow Steve as @SidSkeet when he returns, if he returns. Please, God, Steve, return. And you can follow the show as @Falafel House. You can also check us out in the Fantasy Life app in the Falafel House chat room or anywhere on the app, really. Sal's kind of all over that app. Is there anywhere you don't go?
I ask you to mind your business, sir.
Fair enough.
I get around.
So we're all on there. Similar names for me and Steve, whereas Sal is @Sal33 on that one. So be sure to check us out there. And if you haven't checked out the Fantasy Life app yet, you should definitely do so. It is a great time, particularly on Sundays. I wasn't in there much today. I had a lot going on where I traveled all week, so I had to do a lot of catch-up in between football, so I didn't have a lot of time today, but Sundays are generally a little crazy in there. It's a great place to get your questions answered, or if you just want to chat about the games. Once the games start, it's just all, oh my God, did you see that play, and what the hell's going on with the Chargers, but we'll get to that later. You want to start off today with a game? We're gonna go through each game. You're gonna do a couple. I'm gonna do a couple, and we're gonna forget that Steve even existed.
Right. I'm gonna kick off with the beauty of a game in England this morning, where it ended in a tie. I mean, really, it ended in a tie. Washington 27, Cincinnati 27. I mean, this game was back and forth, and there was a lot of fantasy goodness that came out of this game. So. Surprisingly,
I think the people of London are going to vote for no more NFL.
Yeah, I was going to say, actually, that surprisingly, this is one of the better games that they've had in London, and then it had to end in a tie. I think that there are a few people right now still inside the stadium waiting for them to have like a kickoff. See, like a penalty shootout in soccer, like just wait to kick. Whoever can kick the most balls through the uprights wins. It doesn't work that way. It ends in a tie.
Is there anything more ridiculous than a tie?
Yes, kissing your sister, which is what this equates to.
Wow.
So, one thing, Kev, you brought up the Fantasy Life app, and I'd like to say that I think that the Fantasy Life app is a pretty good indicator of what the fantasy world feels like, fantasy Twitter and stuff like that. And Jesus, man, there's so much hate for Jeremy Hill. People they don't like this guy. And that this is a guy we were all high on, and he hasn't lived up to expectations. But you know what? He got 20 carries today for 76 yards and a touchdown. He had one catch. And Giovanni Bernard had 11 carries for 52 yards and a touchdown, and he had one catch. So, like it or not, every week people think that this is Gio's backfield. Hill still dominates the touches. So he's not going away. And, while Gio seemed to do more with his carries, Hill still outscored him today. Not by a lot in fantasy, but he did outscore him. Andy Dalton had a couple of nice runs today. He also got in the end zone on a rushing touchdown. He completed 9 passes for 121 yards and a touchdown to A.J. Green. A.J. Green showed you today why he's just a phenomenal wide receiver. He really embarrassed Josh Norman. The only time Josh Norman had the upper hand on him was when he was fouling him. 5 penalty flags today on Josh Norman, and one play, 40-yard reception going downfield where Norman, like a cheap coat, was hanging all over him, doing everything possible, got called for the pass interference, and Green still hauled it in. So, Josh Norman, you're poo, my friend. I don't care for you. Tyler Eifert back on the scene today as a tight end 1. This guy's got to be in your lineup every week going forward. 9 receptions, 102 yards, and a touchdown. If you held on to him, good for you. If you didn't trade for him when somebody like Gus offered him to you several times, bad for you. That's me. Across the way with Washington, Kirk Cousins. Kev, you might have to give in here. Kirk Cousins passed for 458 yards and 2 touchdowns today. He did have one interception. And the main beneficiary of his big day was Jamison Crowder, who had 9 receptions for 107 and a touchdown. He had a nice 33-yard touchdown catch. He had a play early in the game where they gave him a little wide receiver screen on, I believe it was either second or third and 17, and he got the first down. He looks really good. I think coming into this week as wide receiver 21, this is a guy, if he's floating out there somewhere in any of your leagues, get him on your roster because he looks like he's the wide receiver 1 going forward. This was Rob Kelly's debut as the starting running back for Washington, and he was much better earlier than he was later. 21 carries, though, for 87 yards and a touchdown, a very serviceable day for you if you were using him as an RB2 or a flex. And considering he missed big portions of this game, Jordan Reed had 9 receptions for 99 yards and a touchdown, and a really nice touchdown. Basically, it was all him. He broke some tackles, spun around, got into the end zone. So while you're worried every week, holding your breath every time he takes a hit, if the guy plays, you start him because he's just that much of a stud. So is there anything from this game, Kevin, that I didn't cover that you would like to get into?
No, I mean, I think you did a good job. Great recap there. It was really nice for me to see Tyler Eifert out there, and I thought he looked good. He moved well. He was his typical self, crashing into people and just playing with no regard for his personal safety, which is nice for us anyway. Probably not as good for him, but he seemed to make it through okay without any further injury. And it's funny you talk about Jeremy Hill and the hate that's out there, and I agree. There's so much hatred for him. And I think people just see what he did to them last year, where he was touted as a top pick, taken in the first round in many drafts, and then just did nothing all year. And then this year, there were people like either, it was one of two things coming into the season, right? You either expected him to rebound completely, and you were drafting him higher than he should have gone because of that, or you were completely off on him and you hated him because of the year before. And in either case, I think he's kind of screwing you because he's just a very serviceable guy who's getting a good volume of work and still, getting touchdowns. So he, if you drafted him high because you expected something out of him, then you're not quite getting enough out of him. But if you didn't draft him at all, you're kind of pissed because you're like, well, I could have taken him in like the 4th round. So
I think one of the funniest things I saw today, he was called a plotter. This plotter, the guy had 168 yards on 9 carries last week.
I was gonna say he had a 76-yard touchdown run last week.
Yeah, this guy is not a plotter. He's not Mike Tolbert.
No,
okay, he's not
he's a basher. I mean, he goes through the middle. He takes hits. There's no question about that. But he's not a plotter. Once he gets into open space, if he gets through that first level, he is a very good running back. Other than that, I thought Robert Kelly looked pretty good. They definitely used him in the Matt Jones role, so it'll be interesting to see what happens with that going forward. Matt Jones obviously falling out of favor and then not playing in this game, so we'll see what happens. And you're right, I am giving up on the Cousins hate. I still don't like him. I'm not ever going to like him. And I think when you throw 56 times, you should have somewhere in the range of 450 yards. But either way,
I think we could agree that he's not. You don't want this guy probably quarterbacking your NFL team, but
right,
your fantasy team, he's going to be throwing like a maniac and putting up big games.
Yeah, they don't seem shy about it, and he does the short passes, the dump offs. I mean, that's how he throws for 58 times and connects on 38 of them. So. But other than that, no, I think my boy Tyler Boyd got a catch.
He got 3 of them. They were trying to work
catches,
the
actually.
Five. Yeah, he had a red zone target too. He
did.
It was a little behind him, but I think Boyd, he's a rookie. He's working himself in there. Maybe by week 17 he could do something.
Yeah, the one other thing I don't think we brought up on the Washington side, you talked about Jordan Reed playing after a couple weeks off, which was great. Had 9 for 99 and a touchdown, which is awesome. But I thought it was interesting that Vernon Davis still had 5 for 93. I actually switched him out of my starting lineup this morning when I heard Reed was going to start, and probably should have kept him in. I guess my question to you is he going to be serviceable the rest of the year? Are they going to go with a lot of 2 tight end sets? Are they going to spell Reed? Are you dropping Davis? Are you hanging on to him? What are you doing with him?
I'm not dropping him because there's always the possibility that just any hit could end it for Jordan Reed. But I don't know that I'm also very comfortable starting him on a weekly basis. And maybe next week, you got another 6 teams off, or you got a bye week situation. To me, he's not a tight end one going forward because Jordan Reed is such a big part of that offense. This might have been a situation where they wanted to, scale back his touches today and just give him a little bit of time to rest between series. So I'd have to see it continue to go forward before I'm going to say I'm going to continue to play him every week.
Yeah, I get that. I just think 5 catches, 93 yards, all caught all 5 of his targets. Jordan Reed was still targeted 13 times despite him getting 5 targets. And he looks like the old Vernon Davis, athletic. He's making, he's quick and he's catching the ball well. So just definitely a guy that I'm not dropping either. I'm keeping him on my radar. Definitely a good bye week fill in for those of you that still have bye weeks left. Obviously there's a lot next week, and then we go all the way to week 13 this year. So and particularly in leagues with large starting rosters where you might have a couple of flexes and tight ends count and those kind of things, you might want to look to play him every once in a while depending on the matchup. All right, so we'll move along here. Next up on the list of games is the Patriots at the Bills, and I know you're excited to talk about this game, Sal.
Woohoo!
Listen, we talked about this multiple times, that this was going to be a revenge game for the Patriots when we talked about this game on the preview show, and it certainly was. Brady came out firing, threw the ball 33 times, only 315 yards, but he gets to 4 touchdowns with no interceptions. Brady is, in my mind, the best fantasy quarterback in the league going forward. Maybe I'm biased. Tell me I'm biased.
I really want to insult you, but you're not.
There's just no question in my mind. I mean, obviously, there's a couple of guys that had better days than him. Derek Carr and Aaron Rodgers finish ahead of him in points, but it's just he's going to be the most consistently at the top 3 every week quarterback in my mind for the rest of the season. So he's just that good, and the weapons that they've surrounded him with this year are better than expected because not a single one of them stand out, but aside from Gronkowski, obviously. But every single one of them is usable and has a purpose, and they exploit that purpose on a regular basis. So, some of the highlights here, obviously Gronk goes 5 receptions on 7 targets, 109 yards and a touchdown. The long touchdown, 53-yard touchdown pass. Well, he looked great in that. It was the typical Gronk down the right hash and just making a great catch, very athletic move. And he breaks a Patriots record for receiving touchdowns, so that's nice. Gronk is what he is. He looks great now that Brady's back. He looks healthy. He looks like the guy you're expecting to be, the number 1 tight end going forward as well. We talked about Chris Hogan on the preview show. He has a great day, 4 catches, 91 yards. He also has a 53-yard touchdown pass. I mean, if it wasn't for the 53-yard pass, he probably wouldn't have had a great day. But I figured they were going to try to get him a nice long bomb. And actually, if you watch that game at all, they tried to get him even more. He had a couple of looks in the end zone that he did the ball. It just didn't make sense for him to throw it that way. I don't even think it counted as targets because of the way that the plays broke down. But they were looking to get him the ball more. Edelman finally gets off the snide with a score, 4 catches for 37 yards, which isn't really what you like, especially when you're talking about 8 targets. I still think there's something wrong with him. I still don't think he's separating. But the touchdown was pure effort. I mean, he just lunged for the end zone, and it was a great score. But for the running backs, Blunt did not have his best day, 18 for 43, but he did get the touchdown to save you if you were starting him. James White did not look great in this game. Not a good start overall. He only gets 2 carries for 15 yards, which is fine if he's active in the passing game, but only saw 5 targets and only catches 2 of them for 14 yards. So definitely not what you want out of James White. And word came out this week that Dion Lewis was practicing again. So we'll see what happens with that. Definitely something to monitor there. On the Bills side of the ball, this was not a great day for them overall. Tyrod Taylor did what Tyrod Taylor does, which is throw for under 200 yards. He didn't even get a touchdown this time, but he did run for 48 yards and a score. So in fantasy, you may have been salvaged a little bit by the rushing touchdown, but I'm looking at 18 points for in our scoring. So still not a great day. Gillislee actually did run pretty well in filling in for LaShawn McCoy, 12 for 85 and a touchdown. And he was the guy. I mean, they gave Williams that touchdown late just because it was his first rushing touchdown as a rookie. So good for him. Not so great for you in your fantasy day because that easily could have been another score for Gillislee. But and then the receivers in Buffalo, Sal, do you know any of them? Do you care about any of them? I mean, none of them did anything really. So
yeah, I don't care about them from a fantasy standpoint. I'm sure they're nice people, and I hope that they're happy individuals. But no, I don't really care. None of you excite me. Robert Woods, get out of here.
Yeah, I mean, I had to start Robert Woods in a very deep league this week, but that's about it. I mean, we're talking a league with I think there's 18 starting players in that league. Or 16? I don't know. It's a lot of starting players, so you're pretty much starting everyone in the team.
You have 16 starters on your roster?
Yeah. Well, you're in that league. How many starters do we have in there?
Oh, the Feed the Disease
League?
the
Disease League, yeah. There's so
I'm
many.
The commissioner of that league.
You created this league. You're the idiot that made it.
I'm pretty sure there's only 10 starters.
No, that's not true.
I'm pretty sure there's only 10 starters in it.
I gotta look it up now. All right,
take a look.
Tell me about this game while I'm looking this up.
Well, I'll tell you what I didn't do. I obviously did not listen very closely to the Falafel House preview show because I have Chris Hogan on my bench in Falafel, and he outscored Willie Snead by probably about 10 points. And I would already have that win locked up. Instead, I have to sweat out needing 6.2 points from Jordan Howard tomorrow night. So, you guys should listen to the Falafel House podcast because evidently the people who work on it are not smart enough to do so. I mean, I can't add much more than what Kevin put in there. He covered all the fantasy relevant guys. I don't think that Chris Hogan is a guy you could trust on a weekly basis going forward. Hopefully Edelman heals up and does look better going forward. But other than that, Kev, I don't have a whole lot to add to what you said.
All right, there are 10 You're right. There's 10 starters, but there are 10 bench spots, so there's no one left in this league.
I knew I was right. I'm the commissioner of that league, for God's sakes.
So my point being, you have to work with the crap of your roster when you're.
There's nobody on. Yeah, there's nobody on waivers.
There's nobody you can get anywhere. So
in fact, when they decided to not play Ty Montgomery last minute today, I had to scour, and I think I picked up a guy who's not even an American citizen. I'm pretty sure.
Nice.
So
I don't know if you have to be an American citizen to play in the NFL, do you?
I have no idea what the rules are.
I don't know anything about that, to be quite honest with you. So.
This guy had symbols and stuff in his name. I can't pronounce it. Anyway.
All right. So let's just keep moving.
Let's move on to the Jets and the Browns. The Jets won this one 31-28. We at 20-7 at halftime. The Browns are winning. They jumped on top of the Jets. And during this game, we were driving out to my son's baseball game today, and he's a Jet fan. And we had this game on the radio, and he just looked at me and he said, "My God, the Jets are embarrassing." And I couldn't help but laugh, and I felt bad, but I still felt that the Jets would come back and win this game, and they did. They came out in the second half. They scored.
Wait! I have to stop you. He didn't want to follow in your footsteps as a tortured Raider fan?
So when he was younger, I took him to see a Jet Raider game, and he was really young at the time. Jet Raider game at the Meadowlands at the time. And the Raiders were bad, really bad at the time. And the Jets were up like 21-0 very early. He looked at me and he's like, I don't think the Raiders are going to win this. And I said, I could have told you that before we got here. The Raiders. What do you mean? So I saw where it was going at that time. And I tried to honestly make him a Giants fan. We live in New York. I tried to make him a Giants fan. Great organization, great history. They win Super Bowls. I took him to Giants camp up in Albany. He met all the players on a 2007 Super Bowl team. He got autographs, and he came home, and his three cousins, who were all Jet fans, turned him into a Jet fan. Yeah. So he lives the life of luxury being a Jet fan.
Yeah.
So the Jets came out. They scored 24 straight points in the second half to get up in this game. And the Browns scored a touchdown late with a 2-point conversion to make it a 3-point game. But it was an 11-point game with 12 seconds left. You saw every reason why the Jets moved away from Ryan Fitzpatrick. 228 yards and 1 touchdown in a very uninspiring performance. If they did not win this game,
hey, he didn't throw an interception.
He did not. He did not throw an interception, but he probably would have on the play where he got his helmet knocked off. But that was, the one play where he was able to take a break. I think that if they would have lost this game, you would have saw Petty next week in at quarterback. So he gets to live one more week, but I think that he is definitely on a short leash. As soon as the Jets fall out of it, I fully expect them to start looking at what they have for their future. Brandon Marshall had a very quiet 4 for 68. You usually expect more for him. I know in this matchup, he was a top probably 5 wide receiver for us.
Yeah.
The guy who came out and impressed me for second week in a row that Quincy Enunwa has a touchdown. He had 4 for 93, and if you saw the touchdown, I think he ran over 3 different Browns players to get into that end zone. It was definitely a man's touchdown. Matt Forte had the game we expected him to have, 82 yards, 2 touchdowns. He added 2 receptions for 16 yards. So last 2 weeks he's looked great. And as we've said, this is the time to trade him. His stock is not going to be any higher than it is right now. He did out-touch Bilal Powell. I mean, I believe it was 27 touches to 7 touches.
25 to 6, yeah.
Yeah, does that include the 2 receptions?
27. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, yes.
Yeah, so just total touches, 27 to 7. I mean, Powell broke off a nice 35-yard touchdown run, and he did have 76 yards. But I think this is a prime time to move Matt Forte. You could get RB1 value for him right now. He's not going to be that the rest of the way, especially if the Jets fall out of it. Over on the Brown side, I had a choice this week in Falafel, 16-team league. I have Eli Manning as my starter. He's on a bye week. I had my choice between is it Josh McCown? Is this Josh or this is Josh McCown, right?
Yeah.
Hey, Mrs. McCown, I'm sorry. I've messed up your boys. Josh McCown or Brock Asswasher. And I chose I'm sorry. I chose Osweiler. Wrong choice. McCown threw for 341 and 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. And 2 interceptions that probably came at bad times and cost him the NFL game. But if I would have had him in, he had a 20-point day in fantasy, and I kind of screwed myself. So the run game was really non-existent today, but Duke Johnson did get involved in the passing game. 6 receptions for 87 yards, keeping him relevant. Terrell Pryor did manage to get 101 yards receiving on 6 receptions, so he seems to be okay going forward. And I think a guy we brought up a few weeks ago that we said, hey, maybe he could become fantasy relevant. In no way were we pushing this guy, and in no way was he even in our top 50s. But Andrew Hawkins had 5 receptions for 31 yards, but 2 big touchdowns where if you were desperate in a bye week situation like this and you happen to get him in there, more power to you. But that's pretty much it.
He's probably playing against Steve.
Oh, there's a good chance he's playing against Steve. Absolutely. 2 ugly teams battling it out for, garbage, I guess. But Kev, was there anything I skipped over in this game?
No, I think you summarized it pretty well with the garbage statement. It's interesting. I'm looking at the numbers now on ESPN, and obviously they do the QBR instead of the quarterback rating. Josh McCown actually had a lower QBR than Ryan Fitzpatrick did. 35.6 to 46.1. So,
yeah, those interceptions weigh heavy.
Yeah, I guess so. And the fact that you throw for just over 50% completion percentage, it's just awful. That was funny. There was a picture on Twitter a while ago about Josh McCown with the pictures of like his daughters and all her friends.
Oh, I saw that picture.
With the jerseys.
Yes.
So he had all his daughters or his 2 daughters, I think it was, and all their friends were each wearing a jersey from one of the different teams that he's been on. I think he's been on like 10 teams. It's incredible. And still somehow starting. So I don't know. I think personally, based on this, I think they're going to put Kessler back in once he's ready to go. But that's just my own personal thought. We'll see what happens this week. I don't know that anyone in fantasy world is counting on either of these guys, although you apparently should have, Sal. No, not a lot else to talk about here. I think you're right about Forte. I don't know that I'd sell him though, because I don't know if you're going to get RB1. Do you really think you're going to get RB1, or do you think most fantasy players are going to look at it and be like, well, it's Matt Forte?
Nah, everybody's got those guys in their league who know what Matt Forte was, and see back-to-back weeks like this. I would definitely try. This would be the time to sell him. If not, you're going to keep him and keep putting him out there. But if you're thinking about it, now's the time.
That's true. I mean, Steve did just trade for Chris Ivory. I mean, so.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously not on either of these teams, but he is a guy that that helped Steve to glory last year. So, all right, we'll continue along with our games here. We're going to check out the Chiefs playing in Indianapolis against the Colts. Alex Smith leaves this game with a concussion twice, not just once, but twice. And we were talking. Sal and I were obviously talking before the show, and one of the things I was saying, which I thought was interesting, was Nick Foles obviously said this to lead off, was the 15th ranked quarterback. He had 16.8 points in our league. Alex Smith actually had 10 points before in between leaving twice. So that would have been a pretty good day if either one of those guys had, started and finished the game. But because, the matchup against the Colts is just that good. And I think the one thing I'm taking away from this game above all else is that if you play the Colts, you can start pretty much any quarterback it is. I think even if it's McCown, even if it's Fitzpatrick, even if it's Ashwasser.
No. Both of those guys outscored Ashwasser.
Ashwasser?
Both of them outscored him.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying you put Ashwasser against the Colts, and that's what you're getting. I think you'd be fine. I think you'd be okay.
Well, I don't need to do that anymore this year. I'm good.
All right, that's good. By the way, should we give Steve a warning when he's editing about ass washer? That's okay, right?
Yeah, everybody washes their ass.
Fair enough.
And if you're out there and you're not doing it, shame on you.
Nice. All right, so like I said, the Kansas City quarterbacks combined to be 25 for 41 with 334 yards and 3 touchdowns with no picks. This is the Kansas City quarterbacks. So like I said, you can start your quarterbacks. The bigger deal here is Spencer Ware leaves the game also with concussions. He didn't only played a half, only got 7. I don't even think he played a full half, to be honest with you. He only got 7 carries, 19 yards, so didn't have a great day. He did have 2 catches for 28 yards, but he left early, and it was the Charcandrick West show. 14 carries for 52 yards, had a long of 18. Didn't really get involved in the passing game as much. He only had 2 catches for 8 yards on 3 targets, so not a lot there. That's not really, what you want out of a passing game guy, but he's definitely going to be a guy that's on the waiver wire this week, because I doubt anyone has him on their roster still, and he's a guy you're definitely going to want to grab. We know concussions can be a tricky thing. We don't know much about what's going on with Ware right now, but you're going to monitor it during the week, and Charcandrick West is a guy that anybody should be trying to pick up this week. He definitely, priority for him, especially as you hear what's going on with Ware. Travis Kelce looked great, 7 catches, 101 yards, and a touchdown. Tyreek Hill, 5 for 98 with a touchdown. He had the 1 long catch for 49 yards, which really kind of solidified him having a good day. Jeremy Maclin gets a touchdown. He gets 3 for 43, but he only catches 3 passes on 10 targets. Sal, what are you doing with Maclin? Anything?
Yeah, I'm putting him on my bench. I don't know that anybody's going to give you anything for him right now. People, like we said before, about the taking the temperature of the fantasy world, Fantasy Life app, everybody is down on this guy. There's not anybody who comes in who has any high hope for him, says anything good about him. So I cannot imagine that you're going to get anything of value for him. So for me right now, he goes to my bench, and if I need to play matchups at some point, I break him out. But interestingly enough, 2 weeks ago, Chris Sims, he does a thing on Bleacher Report called Sims Hidden Truth, and he said before Tyreek Hill had his back-to-back touchdown games that this is the guy that's ready for a breakout. So he was on top of that. And this is a guy I would consider adding in deeper leagues right now. He's got speed to burn for days.
Yeah,
very
he's
impressive
fast.
player.
Very fast.
So,
and clearly they're looking for him. I mean, 6 targets. So Kelsey and Macklin both had 10, but Tyreek Hill is right there with 6. So definitely a guy I agree with you that you're going to want to look to add, especially in deeper leagues. He's for me, he's that Deshaun Jackson type, right? The boomer bust. You don't know when you're going to get the big play, but when it comes, you're going to have a good day. So on the other side of the ball, Andrew Luck did not have a great day, 19 for 35 with 210 yards, 2 touchdowns. He looked awful in the first half, really. Looked like it was going to be a very bad Andrew Luck day. He did get a couple of scores later, and that made it look better. He also rushed for 9 times for 60 yards, which is great for Andrew Luck. I mean, I know he gets mobile from time to time, but 9 for 60 really helps out the fantasy day right there. An extra 6 points on the ground is something you're never going to sneeze at there. Frank Gore, only 9 carries for 37 yards. They just weren't really running the ball very well today. But at least he gets 2 for 25 and a touchdown through the air, so that helps you out on that. And he, like we said, Frank Gore is the RB2. He is the ultimate RB2. He will always be an RB2. You can count on it. Moncrief returns in this one. Looks decent. 4 catches, 41 yards. He did get the touchdown, which is nice. It looks like he's a guy you can insert back in your lineup. We were all very, very high on Moncrief coming into the season at Falafel House. We all, I more so than you guys, but I think we were all pretty high on him having a breakout season and really turning it into something special this year. And he obviously was hurt for most of the year, so it was good to see him come back. Hopefully he can take this and build off of it. Not much else. T.Y. Hilton had a rough day, 1 catch, 20 yards on 6 targets. Moncrief gets targeted the most with 9. Dorsett, 5 catches, 33 yards. He does leave the game on the Hail Mary at the end of the game. Undisclosed injury. Don't really know what's going on, but definitely something to monitor if he's a guy you're playing. Hopefully you're in a very deep league if you're actually starting him. Anything else going on in this game that you got going on there, Sal?
Yeah, I'll just point out that T.Y. Hilton did lead this game at one point with a hamstring injury, and he did eventually come back, but that is something to monitor because we've all seen guys get injured in games, come back and finish, and then still end up missing a week. So this is something to keep your eye on. It could really drive Moncrief's value up. Moncrief, yeah, we were all high on Moncrief, and specifically because when he plays with Andrew Luck, he catches touchdowns. Go back and look at his history of playing with Andrew Luck, and I would say it's an 80 to 85% of the games that they play in together, he catches a touchdown. So the only other injury to discuss, especially with the news about Spencer Ware, is that Jamal Charles, of course, did not play today, and the word came out today that he's going to visit Dr. Andrews. Ooh. This is a really bad sign. I think there's a good possibility that he ends up back on the IR and doesn't even play again this season. Age, doubt in that leg, stuff like that. It's probably not worth the risk to get this guy in the field right now. So that makes Charcandrick West's value. He's going with the number 1 priority waiver this week. If anybody lets him get past the number 1 priority, they're making a big mistake. This is the reason you've been holding that spot for 8 weeks in your fantasy football league.
Yeah, I agree with you. Keep an eye on Ware, though. You haven't heard anything about him, but before you pull the trigger on that number 1 waiver spot, I think you're probably going to anyway, just because it's a great situation either way. Because I think West is probably going to get some carries the rest of the way, but even still, just to have the handcuff for Ware is probably not a bad idea, considering he's probably better than most of the stuff you have on your bench anyway. But definitely keep an eye on what's going on with Ware, because if you get more information by Tuesday, that would, obviously that you want to factor that in. I will also say Jack Doyle comes back down to earth with only 2 catches for 36 yards. So I don't think that that's a sign of anything to come. I think as long as Dwayne Allen's out, you can probably insert this guy in. So, but definitely a tough day. I think that's That's what the majority of tight ends do, right? If it's not Eifert or Gronk or Reed, that's what those guys do. You have a couple of good games, then you have a couple of stinkers. So
trading for Doyle this week. All right, so
you did?
No, I will. No, I will.
Oh, you will be. Yes. Maybe you can get him from Steve, who probably had him in his lineup for a bad day.
He traded him. He traded him this week to
right.
Tag. So he is no longer on the misery train with Steve. Moving along, we'll head over to New Orleans, where the Saints took on the Seahawks, and I think that this is a game that most people thought the Seahawks would come in and win. And you know what? The Saints are a different team at home, and they pulled this one out late on a Lutz. This is another guy I didn't even know was in the NFL. Lutz 41-yard field goal.
You don't know Will Lutz? Come on.
Of course I don't. I do. I don't. Yes. Great guy. Anyway, they won this one late, and Drew Brees did not have his typical, home dominant performance, but this is a tough Seahawks defense. He still managed to pass for 265 yards and a touchdown, and he added a rushing touchdown. It's always funny. Drew Brees is considered a short guy. I think he's actually probably closer to 6 foot than people realize, but whenever I see him leap over the top and stretch like that, it always amazes me that the guy gets in. But he did do that and made his owners very happy with that 6-point touchdown rather than the 4-point that you get for passing. In this game, Mark Ingram had 3 carries for 5 yards, and on that third carry, he fumbled the ball that was returned for a defensive touchdown, and he never saw the field again. And that paved the way for Tim Hightower. It hurts. I mean, unless you were in like a 20-team league, there's a pretty good chance you did not start Tim Hightower today. Right. And he had 102 yards rushing. All the wide receivers were generally ordinary in this game. Thomas went 6 for 63, Snead 6 for 56, and Cooks 4 for 44, but ends up with a bigger day because he got the short touchdown to give him the highest total of all Saints wide receivers. And Fleener, again, very average day. He was in the neighborhood of those guys as well. The ball was spread out pretty well. Over on the Seahawks side, this is public enemy number one for our friend Chopsy, Russell Wilson. I mean, and I got to say, I had people come in today and ask me about starting Jameis Winston over Russell Wilson, and I steadfastly stood behind Russell Wilson. We thought that this would be the game where he's gotten a little bit of a little bit more healthy and he would do well, but he didn't. He passed for 253 yards, 0 touchdowns, 1 interception, and you think maybe he'll bail you out with a good game on the ground, and he did not. He had 3 carries for 11 yards, and all in all, just an absolute below average stinker of a day for a so-called QB1 on your fantasy roster. Christian Michael, he started off well. He got the touchdown early. You thought, all right, here we go. Worst rush defense in fantasy football. We're going to have a day. He finished with 40 yards and that 1 touchdown, and he became an afterthought as a guy who Kevin has pointed out recently that would be getting very involved now that he's healthy in the offense. CJ Prosise, he had 4 receptions for 80 yards, and he added another 23 yards on the ground for a plus 100 day. And I could definitely see this guy starting to get more and more involved in the offense, just like you pointed out, Kevin. I actually started him as a flex and won DraftKings today. So
nice.
While the guys around him probably didn't perform up to what he did, it was a nice spot start for me. And with Wilson's struggles, all the wide receivers were very ordinary, and Jimmy Graham was very average today. So not a whole lot of goodness, but probably the highest scoring person on the Seahawks today was their defense. They still managed to get 9 points today, which is a good day from a fantasy defense. Steve, I'm so sorry, Steve. You say I miss you, buddy. I miss you. Kevin, would you like to add anything to this game?
I appreciate the kudos on the Prosise. I mean, he's just a guy that you could see coming. They need that pass catching back in this offense because they can't really get anything else going with their air attack. There is nothing to like in the throwing game for this team right now because they just don't have it. I don't know if it's Russell Wilson's multitude of injuries that are keeping them from passing the ball well, but They don't have it at all. His lack of ability to run around in the pocket or leave the pocket and extend the plays effectively is killing the receivers' abilities to get open downfield, which is kind of their bread and butter. So having a guy like Prosise, this is why I was touting him, is you need the check down when that happens. When you can't do that, you need to be able to get the ball out quick. You need to be able to get those check downs, and none of their receivers are really that guy except for coming out of the backfield. So it's good to see. Hopefully, I think he's a guy you need. If he hasn't been picked up yet, you should be picking him up, because I think you will see more days like this. I don't think he's ever going to be, get the majority of carries, but he is going to be very involved in the passing game. 4 for 80 and 4 on 4 targets. He got 4 rushes. I think that's what you're going to see out of him. You might even see a little bit more. You might even start to see, the Charles Sims from last year or the Theo Riddick from last year and starting to come back this year. Those kind of guys. That's the kind of role that I think you might see out of this guy. So he's obviously worth an ad at that point. Other than that, I think you're right on. The Tim Hightower thing just hurts. I gotta wonder if Sean Payton is playing fantasy football and didn't, had Ingram or was playing against Ingram today. That's the type of thing that I wonder in this, because I get it. I get the benching. No one understands benching a running back for fumbles more than people of New England. So it happens regularly around here, but it's still. They needed him in this game too. They won, but they really needed him, because Hightower, while he had 26 for 102, he really wasn't that great.
Yeah, I don't think Hightower is the level player that Ingram is, but I think that they were trying to send a message. And I think it's also very important for the Ingram owners out there to note that Sean Payton did say that he feels Ingram will bounce back from the benching, and I do believe he will start next week. This was hey, I need to send a message. This is a big game. This is an important game. This is a season-turning game. And they did go out there, and I think he made his point by winning. So while Ingram is clearly the better player, they got the job done today.
Yeah, absolutely. And surprisingly, the Saints are still in that division, as you mentioned. So, who knows? They're going to need him, and hopefully that you'll be right there, and he'll be right back in it. So. Not a lot else for me to say about this game, so let's move along to your Oakland Raiders, Sal, taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The only injury of note on this is Jacquizz Rodgers leaves the game in overtime with a foot injury, so he didn't play most of overtime, but that's about it for injury on the injury front. But this game overall, what else can you start with besides Derek Carr? From a fantasy perspective, there's really nothing more you could ask for a guy to do than throwing for 513 yards and 4 touchdowns. Yeah, that's right. 513 yards and 4 touchdowns.
No interceptions.
And no interceptions. Not that it would have mattered at that point. Falafel scoring, that's 35.8 points, but I know in a lot of leagues that's even more than that.
In the Yahoo League where I went against him, he scored over 50.
Yeah, it's insane. Any kind of league with a bonus or anything like that, you're going to see those kind of point totals. But that's crazy. He had a good day and he needed it. This game was tight. I'm sure you were sweating bullets there, Sal.
Yeah, interestingly enough, I was by this time we were at the baseball game, and I had this on the iPad, and we're watching. I had a group of people around me, and and Janikowski misses the 50-yarder at the end of regulation, that misses another one in overtime, and they trade the ball back and forth. I was for sure thinking we were going to see our third tie in the last 7 days, but luckily they managed to pull it out because Tampa Bay forgot how to tackle.
Tampa Bay did forget how to tackle. For such a high pass throwing day, obviously you got to have some receivers that are going to do something. Amari Cooper finally breaks out with the big one, 12 catches, 173 yards and a touchdown. And I think he could have had more.
He dropped a 40.
Yeah, he had 15 targets, and some of to your point, Well, at least one of those targets was a long one. So
wide open, threw his arms off his knee, out of bounds.
He left a lot out there. Crabtree gets you 8 catches, 108 yards on 16 targets. He led the way with targets for 16. Those two guys combined for 31 targets. That's insane.
That is pretty crazy. I'll just add. I hate to cut you off, but I'll just add that. We had our little midseason fantasy draft the other day, and I took Michael Crabtree with the 15th overall pick. I'm going to say this to you. I said exactly that night. Amari Cooper has all the ability in the world, but Amari Cooper will come out next week and give you like a 40-yard performance, and Crabtree will be right around 100 yards again and probably get a touchdown. So for consistency on a weekly basis, Crabtree is the more consistent, reliable guy, but Cooper he has the ability to have these, Julio Jones type of days. This is a guy a year or two from now, Amari Cooper is going to be a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL. He's just got so much talent. But right now, if you want the guy who's more consistent on a weekly basis, it's going to be Crabtree.
So I was going to ask you that, actually. You mentioned in the future, we're more than halfway through the fantasy season this year. What are you going to do with Cooper next year? Do you think he's in that round 1 discussion?
I'm going to have to think long and hard about that because I own both him and Julio Jones in Falafel. And Julio Jones is obviously a first-round keeper penalty. But the way we do it in our league, you lose the round earlier that you drafted him. So since I have Amari Cooper and he was held as a number 2, a second-round keeper this year, he would be a first-round value next year. So I can't see me keeping him over Julio Jones. So unless I trade Julio Jones for a big windfall in the offseason, I don't see myself keeping Amari Cooper. I think that he's still probably a second-round guy until he works it out. But, 2 years from now, is going to be a guy who's definitely in a discussion with the elite wide receivers.
I can tell you for a fact Steve feels really bad for you for having to make that decision.
Yeah, wah.
Seth Roberts gets the long touchdown to end the game in overtime. He has 3 for 69 with a touchdown. He had a 41-yard touchdown. So outside of that, he would have had 2 catches for 28 yards. So, he's going to have a couple of games where he scores, but that's about it. Only in deeper leagues is he serviceable. And from the that helps no one category, Donald Penn actually catches a touchdown pass for 1 yard. Thank you, Donald Penn. On the Tampa Bay side, Winston had a good day, I guess, from fantasy purposes. He only threw for 180 yards, but he did have 2 touchdowns. He also ran for 16 yards. And in Falafel scoring, he was, the 13th quarterback, I guess, and doubled the amount of points that Russell Wilson scored. So you owe someone an apology, Sal.
I owe several people an apology. I'm sorry. Get off my back.
Jacquizz Rodgers has 19 carries for 69 yards and a touchdown, so he finally gets in the end zone. But as I mentioned, he did leave this game at the end either at the end of regulation or just into overtime. I forget which, but he did leave the game with an injury. Not really sure what the injury is. We'll have to monitor that. Barber does nothing in this game. I actually started him. I had to. I had legitimately no other choice. But it was him or Langford. I probably should have gone with Langford. We'll see what he does tomorrow.
Well, you gave
night.
up .01.
0.01. 1 carry, 1 yard. So that was it. Yeah, tough day. The passing game, not a lot of fantasy goodness for the receivers there. Like I said, Jameis had a decent day, but the receivers did not. Spread the ball around pretty well. Evans only has 4 catches for 50 yards, which is very low for him. Russell Shepard, the Sal's darling of the week, 2 catches, 24 yards, but he does get in the end zone, so that helps you out there. And Cameron Brate scores again, even though he only had 3 catches for 22 yards. So not a lot of fantasy goodness, as I mentioned, in the receiving game there, and we don't know exactly what's going to go on with the running game in Tampa Bay. Interestingly enough, when Rodgers did go down, it was Antone Smith that came in to get more carries and more touches than Barber. I'm not sure if that's really because they were throwing at the time. Smith only had 4 carries to Barber's 1. but he was involved in the passing game a little bit more and wasn't on far more plays. So we'll have to see what happens there.
Before we move on from this game, let's not forget, to point out the dubious distinction that the Raiders set the record for most penalties in a single NFL game today. And when they got the record and the penalty was declined, they came back out on the very next play and got a penalty again to assure themselves the record of 23 penalties in one game. So you saw both the good and the bad with a young football team. This will probably be one of the things that holds them back come the end. They're 6-2. I'm very shocked myself that they're 6-2. It's not that I don't think they're good enough. It's just that they're inconsistent and they do silly, stupid things. So I hope that they get this cleaned up and it doesn't come back to haunt them when it's down the stretch.
Did they break their own record?
Most likely, because this is you're a Raider
penalized
fan, you know,
team. So.
This is the history of the Raiders. They're always constantly in the high teens, and I'm sure they've touched 20 a couple of times. So I don't know who held the record coming in today. Maybe we'll research that and do it on Tuesday's show.
I will say, I think I said to you guys in our offline chat, while the games were going on, that that's one of the reasons as a Patriot fan I love playing the Bills, because any Rex Ryan team is just so undisciplined and you just get so many of those stupid penalties, like the extra hits outside, out of bounds and things like that, where you just thank you for the 15 yards. I appreciate it.
Completely undisciplined.
So, anyway, let's keep moving here. What do you got on the Cardinals and Panthers?
Yeah, we move over to last year's NFC Championship game. This was a pretty ugly game. I mean,
yeah.
The final score ends up being Panthers 30, Cardinals 20, but the Cardinals scored 2 late touchdowns to make it look like it was close. So the Panthers came right out and steamrolled them. And it just was not a good showing for the Cardinals. For every bit that they've done the last couple of weeks to get themselves back in a race, they really shot themselves in the foot today. And luckily for them, the Seahawks also did the same thing. So it doesn't put them out of contention, but they need to clean up a lot of stuff. This was definitely a defensive game, a defensive win for the Panthers, sprinkled in with a Jonathan Stewart game, 95 yards on the ground with 2 touchdowns, and he added another 25 through the air on 1 catch. I did say I didn't like this matchup this week for Jonathan Stewart. Kevin scoffed at me, and you are correct, sir. So, good game for him.
Back-to-back games with 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean, I did, as much as I always say I don't like Jonathan Stewart, I did try to trade for him in Falafel last week. I'll say that out loud, but, you do silly things in crazy times. So Cam Newton threw for only 212 yards in the air, and he had 43 rushing yards, but he did nothing for you touchdown-wise at all. So he had a very, very below-average fantasy day, considering he was probably a top 5 quarterback on most people's list this week, and that, of course, hampered all the wide receivers. Kelvin Benjamin had 1 big 50-yard reception and then added 1 for 23. And then other than that, Greg Olsen, the number 1 tight end in fantasy football so far this year, had 1 catch for 11 yards. So, yeah, people have been relying on it. That was like, something you could count on every week, and you could not count on it this week. Going over to the Cardinals, well, the Cardinals brought you the garbage time bonanza of the week. So if you started Cardinals and you were cursing your players, your guys out, especially Carson Palmer in the first half, they closed strongly for you. Carson Palmer, who was primarily the reason that the Cardinals were buried so early, he finished with 363 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. And the main recipient of that was J.J. Nelson, who with eight receptions for 79 yards and 2 touchdowns has now led the Cardinals in receiving for 2 straight weeks. So this is a guy who you might want to pick up on the waivers this week, or maybe you can even sneak and grab him as a free agent after it clears, because some people might not have realized that he's been as good as he's been the last couple of weeks. Larry Fitzgerald ended up with 10 receptions for only 74 yards. I say only, it's because, that's a 7.4 yard average, and that's, possession receiver numbers, which, by the way, this is what happened to Larry Fitzgerald last year. He was big early, touchdowns, big yardage, and he became a possession guy the rest of the way. So in PPR, still valuable, but in a standard league, he's not really cutting the mustard right now. John Brown got into the end zone, making a 4 for 49 day look better. And Michael Floyd, Put up his second goose egg of the season.
Sal,
It's
not even a target. Not even a target.
This is brutal. I dropped him in a few leagues a couple weeks ago, and I did recommend that you do in some deeper leagues and some dynasty leagues. I still have him, but
this has got to be the one that's the most painful to you this year.
Oh, yeah. This is the guy I thought had the opportunity to be a wide receiver one by the end of the season. This was by far my biggest whiffer. Does that sound good up there in New England?
Yeah, there you go. I do still think that when he goes to another team next year or whatever, it should be next year, right? I think his contract's up at the end of the year. So.
This is his free agency year, correct.
I do think that he has the talent and the overall physicality and ability to be that guy. So I think on another team you might see him. He's a guy that I'll take a late round flyer on next year.
Yeah, like I said, if you got him in Dynasty, you're definitely holding on to him.
Yep.
The only other guy we'll talk about here is David Johnson. This is why, in my opinion, he's the best fantasy running back in the game. I mean, he was being stymied on the ground. Only had 24 yards on 10 carries. So he goes to the air and he gets 84 yards on 7 receptions to salvage his day. He's a threat. He's a dual threat both ways, and he finds ways to get you fantasy points. Now, that's not his main goal, but his main goal is to help his team win, and he does whatever it takes to help his NFL team and his fantasy owners win their matchups. So that's all I got in this game, Kevin, if you want to add anything else, or if not, we can just mosey right along.
Well, just on the David Johnson point, not a single other running back in Arizona got a carry, and obviously he was, third on the team in targets. So this guy's volume is just out off the charts, and so he is absolutely amazing. I like the call on J.J. Nelson. He is a guy that you should look to pick up pretty quickly, so because he is getting more involved, and with Floyd being, I don't want to say useless, but useless, they rely on that second receiver quite a bit with Fitzgerald over the middle as the possession guy, so not a bad spot to be in if you are J.J. Nelson. So and Jerron Brown, who they liked, is also out now. So that's about it, really. I think you covered the game pretty well. So let's just move quite along here. The Lions played in Houston at the Texans, and this game was not very good either. It's amazing to me how bad Osweiler is. I don't know. I don't know how much worse you can get.
Worst pass defense in the league. He was below average against the worst pass defense in the league.
Yeah, I mean, he threw the ball 29 times. He completed 20 passes for 186 yards and a touchdown. But if you watched any of it, it was even worse than that. He just does not look good, and he is killing DeAndre Hopkins. It's like the old Seinfeld episode where they're killing Independent George.
They're killing Independent Hopkins.
He's killing Independent Hopkins. There is just no doubt about it. He is absolutely killing him. 4 for 44, no touchdowns, 7 targets, and it's only a matter of time before Hopkins goes off, right? And just I don't know, punches Osweiler in the face or something. I mean, I don't know.
It's going to that point?
I think it's going to happen. I mean, there was almost a fight between Bill O'Brien and his special teams coach. So
yeah, he was not happy with Izzo. That's your boy.
Yeah, that is my boy. I thought that was pretty funny, actually, because Izzo's a little hothead. I'm surprised he didn't pop him. But
I was really wondering in my head what Izzo was thinking when that was going on, knowing, all right, this is the head coach and I can't do anything, but I would love to rip that guy's clean off his head.
Rip him to shreds, because that guy's crazy. All the special teams guys are crazy. They're all nuts, because that was his goal, was run down the field and hit as many people as he possibly could. Anyway, I digress. Lamar Miller, 17 for 56. He does get you the touchdown, but again, didn't have a lot of running rooms. And Alfred Blue was involved here, 9 for 41. So they did filter some of the carries away. I think they might be realizing that you can't run Miller into the ground. I mean, I know he's coming off an injury.
You can run him into the ground. It's just not a good idea.
Yeah, it doesn't work. I mean, but look, he was more effective in this game, at least 56 yards and a score, than he had been in plenty of other games where he had 30 rushes. So, not a whole lot else on the Houston side of the ball. Will Fuller does leave the game in the second half with a leg injury. Hasn't been disclosed what that leg injury is, so we'll have to monitor that going forward. Before he left, he didn't really have a great day anyway. He had, one catch, 23 yards. So, and then Jalen Strong, if any of you are playing Jalen Strong in deep leagues, he also leaves the game. CJ Fedorowicz has another good game, 5 catches, 43 yards, does get a touchdown. He's become a very serviceable tight end. So if he's a guy that, that's still out there and you're looking for a bye week fill-in or anything like that, you should definitely look at Fedorowicz. On the Detroit side of the ball, they looked better than, even though they lost the game, they looked better than Houston. Stafford goes 27 of 41 for a 240 and a touchdown. Not a great day there, but overall no picks, and he threw the ball pretty well. Theo Riddick returned to action this week. 11 carries for 56 yards. He also got 8 catches for 77 yards and a score on 11 targets, and that's what Theo Riddick does, and that's why he's such a valuable running back. Dwayne Washington was a surprise healthy scratch there, Sal.
Yeah, I wrote that in the Falafel chat earlier today, and that really shocked me. That tells me there really is only one running back right now to own, and that is Theo Riddick. You don't want anybody else. These guys are just taking up space on your roster. If he was healthy and they put out Zach Zenner, who they only gave 3 touches to today, 4 touches if you count the reception, then that means he's possibly fallen out of favor in there. Yeah,
Forsett was active, but he didn't do anything, but he was at least active. So if Forsett's getting the nod over you, you know something's wrong. So I don't know if it's, it wasn't injury related because he was a healthy scratch, but still something's going on there. So he's a guy that's most likely droppable in all leagues. Ebron has a decent day. Eric Ebron has a decent day at tight end for 7 catches for 79 yards. He had 10 targets. Golden Tate has another okay day with 9 targets, 7 catches, and 42 yards. Wish he had more yardage, but at least the catches didn't, or the targets didn't go away with Riddick coming back. And Marvin Jones continues to slide. Only 3 catches for 33 yards on 7 targets in this one. So he's a guy that really fell from the top, literally the top, since he was, I think, the number 1 ranked wide receiver after 2 or 3 weeks. So he's fallen all the way down, and he's not a guy, you're still going to roll him out there as a wide receiver too, I think, but because he has potential, but tough sledding for him. Anything else, Sal?
Yeah, not a whole lot here. Stafford probably has not that he had a bad day NFL-wise, but probably his worst fantasy day of the year. You usually expect multiple touchdowns out of him and maybe get over 300 yards, but, it's a game that I thought that the Lions could really win. If it was in Detroit, I would have taken them. I did take Houston, but I was a little disappointed in the way the Lions played today. Everybody outside of Theo Riddick and surprisingly Ebron, who I recommended not starting today because I wanted to see him get back and be healthy first. But there's not a whole lot to add to what's going on here.
All right, well, let's move along then.
Yeah, so if Steve was here right now, I tell you the one thing I don't miss about him is the constant text that we are running late and we're over. So I know we're running late, and I'm moving on now to the Broncos and the Chargers in a game that the Broncos won 27-19. And can you do the math for me, Kevin? How many points did they win by? 27-19?
That's 8 points.
8 points. So I'm not going to give
basically 1 touchdown.
Right, and a 2-point conversion. So
right.
I'm not going to give you a whole lot of stats for this game. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to talk to you, Mike McCoy. Okay? You probably have children. You're probably a family man. I don't like to recommend that anybody get fired, but you should be fired. Okay? I'm sitting there. I'm going to kick something over here. You'll be kicking stuff over here. That's how you had me feeling today watching this goddamn game, Mike. All right? Now, I'm a Raider fan, so it does nothing but bring me pleasure to see the Chargers fail and just spit up on their own shoes. 5:19 left in the game. Chargers get the ball down by 8 on their own 25-yard line. They drive all the way down to the Broncos' 2-yard line. And do you know how they got down there? Melvin Gordon, 28-yard catch. Melvin Gordon, 17-yard run. Melvin Gordon, 9-yard run. So, first and goal at the 2-yard line. Melvin Gordon, who's leading the league with 8 rushing touchdowns in 7 games, you got 4 downs. It's 2 minutes and 54 seconds left now. You have 3 timeouts. No reason to rush the clock. No reason to hurry it up. You have 4 downs from the 2-yard line to run Melvin Gordon into the end zone. And they ran him exactly 0 times. Instead, they line up in shotgun all 4 plays, and Rivers runs around like a chicken missing his head, throwing the ball into the ground, throwing it that back. There wasn't even one play that was close to being a touchdown. So not only did you screw Melvin Gordon owners, which isn't your job, Mike, but your job is to win games. You were down by 8. You run the ball in, you go for the 2-point conversion, and you got a chance to tie it. This guy, earlier in the year, his job was on the line until they won a game. There's no way I see this guy making it out of the week. He has to be fired for something. And all honestly, I don't like to see anybody lose their job, but this was the biggest dumbass move I've seen in a lot of years in watching the NFL.
Yeah, I agree with you. I was watching this game and just shaking my head like, what are you doing? And all right, so maybe you try a throw on first or second down. Maybe you try a rollout or a play action on first or second down because you think they're stacking the box. Obviously, it's goal line, so it is what it is. But all right, you got to run the ball at least once. You have to. 2 yards. And to your point, Gordon had a good day, 23 for 111, outside of the fact that he didn't score because they didn't give him the chance. I agree with you, Sal. I don't like to see people get fired either, but he should be fired. There's just no question about it. I'll quickly go through not a lot else since you're a little fired up here. Not a lot.
Yeah, you might have to hurry up because I got to ice my foot. I just kicked this.
Really not a lot to talk about in this game, to be quite honest with you, on either side. I think the interesting things of note, Gordon had a good day rushing the ball, like we said, 23 for 111, would have been better with a touchdown. Devontae Booker looked pretty decent. He did leave this game, but he came back in. He had 19 carries for 54 yards and a touchdown, but he looked good in the passing game as well. He got 6 targets, 5 catches for 30 yards. So overall, good day for him with over 80 yards and a touchdown. The receivers in Bronco land are kind of up and down, and that's kind of what you're going to get when you have a quarterback like Trevor Siemian playing. And none of them really had a great day. Demaryius Thomas leads the way with 79 yards on 5 catches. Sanders right behind him with 68 yards on 4 catches. Virgil Green 4 for 55, but nobody gets in the end zone as Siemian doesn't throw a touchdown pass. On the San Diego side of the ball, this is exactly what we told you. Dontrell Inman leads the way this week. Could have been Benjamin, could have been Williams, could have been Gates, could have been Henry, could have been Melvin Gordon had a nice day, 4 for 44. You really just don't know with this offense, so you're going to roll these guys out here. Benjamin gets a touchdown with 44 yards, so I guess he kind of had the best fantasy day, but Inman gets 4 for 72. So, I don't know what to do with that receiving core. I don't think you're doing anything much. You're certainly not depending on these guys. So,
wide receiver threes and flex plays. That's
exactly,
what they are.
Exactly. Phillip Rivers gets you 2 touchdowns, but he also threw 3 picks, so not a great day for him. And as I said, Siemian didn't get any touchdowns on the Broncos side of the ball. So that's about it for this. Anything I miss?
Please, let's move on.
All right, let's move on. The Packers and the Falcons to end the day. Obviously, the Sunday night game is going on right now, but the Packers and the Falcons, this was an interesting one. It was a great game, fun to watch, lots of points. Aaron Rodgers looked phenomenal in this game, and actually both quarterbacks. You shouldn't even say Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers started off really, really hot in this game. He ends up with 246 yards and 4 touchdowns and no interceptions. Matt Ryan on the other side of the ball, 288, 3 touchdowns and no interceptions. So great days out of both fantasy quarterbacks. They're finished 2 and 3 right now, I think, in quarterback scoring. Only one quarterback higher than them. Obviously, that's Derek Carr. So great days for them all around. But they did spread the ball, and Jordy Nelson had a great day. 4 for 94. He does get in the end zone finally. He looked kind of like the Jordy Nelson that you expected at the beginning of the season. Devontae Adams gets 12 for 74 yards. And that's about it. Everything else all along the Green Bay receiving core is pretty much nothing. And for rushing, Aaron Rodgers leads the way with the rushing game for 6 carries, 60 yards. He had the most carries, the most yards. My boy Aaron Ripkowski, Sal, showing up.
The Ripkowski. Yes.
All over the stat sheet, my friend. He had 6 for 34, but really that's, nobody's doing anything with those guys. On the other side of the ball, I thought it was interesting. Devonta Freeman, 11 carries, 35 yards, really couldn't run. We knew the Packers have a good run defense, and that showed here. I thought Freeman might have a better day with Coleman out, but still struggled. And then on the passing game, it was all over the place for the receiving core. Julio Jones has a terrible day, Sal. 3 for 29 on 5 targets. I think he was just bottled up all day, which is why Mohamed Sanu had a great day, 9 catches for 84 yards and a touchdown. And then that's pretty much it for anyone that you had on your roster.
I mean, Freeman did still get a receiving and rushing touchdown, and that's something he brought to the table last year. He scored touchdowns in volume. He still manages to get nearly a 20-point day, even though he did not total over 100 yards. I mean, Matt Ryan continues to impress. I believe he was the number 1 ranked quarterback coming in to this week, and I don't see him getting passed up even with the big day that Derek Carr had. So this is a guy now halfway through the NFL season. You could count on him as a QB1 on a weekly basis. I wanted to say F you to Jeff Janis. I did, and if anybody at all could have caught that touchdown other than Jeff Janis at that point, I am now sweating out a victory because of you son of a beep. So, not much to add on here. Interesting to see what goes on forward with Tevin Coleman because Ward looked pretty decent in the touches that he got. So it does look like they'll still have a second running back involved, just not to the level that Tevin Coleman was.
Yep, and that about wraps it up. I think that's all the games. We will obviously we'll keep an eye on this Sunday night thriller for you. Right now the Cowboys are tied with the Eagles 23-23. Looks like this one's probably going to go into overtime. So
overtime.
Maybe we'll have some notes on that when we reconvene on Monday night for us. Tuesday night for us, Wednesday morning for you guys. And Sal, let's get to some quick final thoughts. We are way over because Steve's not here. So
it was an honor of my good friend Steve. Thank you for sticking with us all the way to the end. You can follow us on Twitter at Falafel House, on Facebook and Instagram at Falafel House. You can visit our website for daily, weekly rankings, DFS, Start Sit, and so much more at falafelhouse.com. And of course, we are always home in a Falafel House chat, the number 1 trending chat for 14 months on the Fantasy Life app. Kevin?
14 months straight of the number 1 trending chat. That's pretty impressive. For me, I just want to, again, thank everyone for sticking through all the way. Steve, we miss you because we cannot keep time without you. And left to our own devices, we will ramble on. Which I'm doing.
Who's going to hit the button?
Which I'm doing right now. I just want to remind everyone that we love reviews. So if you go to iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts and review us, that would be great. And until next time, I guess hit the button.
Hit it.